TV movie, limited series, all the awards categories. I'm going to start with the one I think is the easiest pick for most of us, which is TV movie. Oh no, Ben's rolling his eyes.
Turkey.
Ben is rolling his eyes.
I don't like this category because I've been wrong in it for, 4 years?
So
3 years?
It's essentially a head v head, Bad Education versus El Camino, correct? Am I wrong?
In theory, yes. But there's also the possibility that, the TV Academy all these years really just loved episodic anthologies, and Dolly Parton will win. So,
Ben, on the site you have Bad Education both as the will win and should win, with El Camino as the could win. Mm-hmm. And you're not feeling certain about that right now in the moment.
No, I will never feel certain in this category so long as it's so long as Netflix has like anything in it against an actual TV movie, because again, for the last 3 years, it really felt like, the first year Black Mirror submitted an episode and won. It was like, okay, that we kind of saw that happening. People were really excited about that episode. It made a little bit of sense. But, by last year when
Deadwood,
the movie, is losing to an interactive special despite getting, I think, 9 nominations overall, it just doesn't, like, the math doesn't even add up. So the idea that anything is set in stone here is crazy to me. And I loved El Camino. I thought El Camino was actually a fantastic standalone film, even though it still leans very, very hard on, the Breaking Bad backstory. So I'm not going to be upset if either of those win, but I'm not feeling particularly, I wouldn't bet money on what I've got down. I wouldn't bet money on Bad Education, even though it's definitely the best of the lot.
I mean, I have to agree with Ben. I think Bad Education's the best bet. El Camino a close second. But I don't know. I have no idea. I really underestimated. Months ago, I was like, well, wait till the nominations come out. Things will be much more clear. And it is. It's a much smaller pool that I have no idea about. But I still have no idea, which is always what you want to hear from an Emmy prognosticator. But it's hard. It's hard this year without buzz, without getting a feel for what people are thinking. It feels like a year where people are going to be making a lot of gut decisions, which is why I think my feeling about comedy is changing, but we'll deal with that in a couple weeks.
Well, now let's move on to the acting categories. Best Supporting Actor, we have Dylan McDermott for Hollywood, Jim Parsons for Hollywood, Titus Burgess for Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, and then we have a trio of Watchmen actors, Yahya Abdul-Mateen, Jovan Adepo, and Louis Gossett Jr. Libby, on Gold Derby, I don't know if this is the way you wanted it locked, but you have Louis Gossett Jr. winning right now. Ben, you have not filled out your supporting actor. So,
that doesn't sound like me.
Who will win?
Oh, I didn't do it. I'm gonna say Yahya at this very moment with a possibly immediate pivot before this conversation ends to Louis Gossett Jr. I do feel like a Watchmen actor is going to come out of this. I'm not as worried about vote splitting here, if only because it would have to happen on Hollywood as well, because Dylan McDermott is eons better than Jim Parsons on that show, and Jim Parsons is somehow still the favorite, so don't see that happening. I think Yahya being a very prominent figure, being asked to play not two different parts, but very different, a very evolved character within a short arc. I think that works to his benefit, as well as he's just becoming a bit more popular out there. Like, he's getting a lot of big name roles. People are eager to see more of him. He's a very likable presence. He's a very smart guy. Like, he's somebody who I think is just an easy vote to cast. But I honestly wouldn't be surprised if anybody won this, except for maybe Titus Burgess. Like, that would be a bit of a surprise, if only because that movie got nominated twice, and this is one of them, so I don't see it.
Libby, are you sticking with Louis Gossett Jr.?
I will, and I'll tell you why. I was actually one of the few people who had him pegged in nominations, too. He was a pretty far out there, like Jovan and Yahya, and I think even
Tim Blake Nelson?
And I just had this set. I went with Louis Gossett Jr. because I think he's incredibly effective in that role. I think he is very strong in the finale, which in one of the final scenes that we see, he's really central to a lot of the scenes about America's cultural history. And I just think people love him. I mean, everyone loves Louis Gossett Jr. Like, I don't know. I just don't think he should be discounted. I think it's a really powerful role. And I do think that Yahya is hurt by the fact that for the back half of this series, he is portraying a very atypical person who doesn't emote a lot. And by a lot, I mean at all. So that's definitely can be hard to, I think, get a bead on how good or bad a performance is. I love him. I think it's a great performance. I just don't know if that translates across the board. I'm sticking with Gossett. Ooh, go.
Oh no, I was saying, and I posed, just to talk about the third Watchmen nominee, I posed this question to you before we started recording. Jovan Adepo is amazing in This Extraordinary Being, but that's essentially, as you said, Libby, like, amazing tape, but it's one episode out of 9. And so, like, is that enough to warrant a win? But
if everyone's just submitting one tape, is it a problem? But also, it's quite a tape. And as far as screen time goes, I'd love to see a breakdown of how much time he spends on screen as opposed to, like, Louis Gossett Jr., because I would bet they're closer than we think.
Well, remember, most of that episode, he's
Jovan
also swapping.
Absolutely.
He's swapping with Regina King, in and out.
True.
Hot swaps.
Jovan is definitely my dark horse in this. I would not be surprised at all if he steps up and wins it. It's such a powerful episode. It's an episode that the TV Academy responded to across the board.
I'm going to go with Jim Parsons, Hollywood.
Leo, you are fired from this
What
podcast.
What if Leo went through and just, like, picked the front runner in every category?
That's not what I'm doing. I will say, I just think there's I think I want all the good things to happen, but I think some bad things will happen. I think Jim Parsons beating the Watchmen trio is something that could potentially happen. I want Louis Gossett Jr. to win.
I think that's not where it happens. I think it happens in our next category.
Oh, no. Well,
sorry.
Great segue to Best Supporting Actress, where the nominees are Holland Taylor from Hollywood, a trio of Mrs. America actresses, Margot Martindale, Tracy Ullman, and Uzo Aduba, and then Toni Collette from Unbelievable, and then Jean Smart for Watchmen. So, Libby, you have Jean Smart on your Gold Derby page.
I do.
Ben, obviously you haven't filled out your Gold Derby page yet.
So my early reaction to this is tending toward Uzo Aduba. I really think that with 10 nominations, they're going to try to find some place to honor Mrs. America that's significant. That's more prominent. That's part of the Sunday night award show as opposed to the weekly, creative arts ceremonies. And that's not to say, one is more valuable than the other by any means. But I do think that the actors did respond to the actors on this show, so they might find a way to do it. And I think Uzo's probably got the best episode of the nominated people. I think her character is the easiest one to get behind. I think it speaks to the moment. So I would love for Jean Smart to take this, and she's clearly very popular within the Academy over a long period of time. Like, people really have respected her for years. But Uzo is also, she's 2 for 3 so far, 2 for 4, whatever it is. So I
2 for 3. That includes this nomination.
Yeah. So I think she might be in store for another win. I think the only thing that really would stop her, aside from people just really preferring another performance, would be the recency of it. Would just be them being like, well, it's been a long time for Jean, and Uzo we've honored pretty recently. But yeah, this is another one where I'm not locked on anybody in particular.
I will say this category is crazy in terms of, I just have to note, like, not even including Tracy Ullman's 25 nominations for her career. Everyone else has more than 4 nominations. It's a stacked category.
Oh yeah, and then you think about the people who missed being in this category, like the rest of the Mrs. America cast. It's honestly mind-boggling. And I love Jean Smart. Jean Smart is like a childhood hero of mine, but Uzo Aduba is beloved by the Academy. She played Shirley Chisholm. You know, her episode is about her presidential campaign. I think on the heels of Kamala Harris's, you know, historic vice presidential nomination, it's just, and you know, I just think the time is right for Uzo. I think the timing works out unless we're seeing a full Watchmen, like unless people are getting their ballots and they're just like Watchmen, which is possible. But this is a category that I think is up in the air more than we maybe want it to be.
Agreed.
Moving on to Best Actor in a Limited Series or TV Movie, where the nominees are Paul Mescal for Normal People, Mark Ruffalo for I Know This Much Is True, Hugh Jackman for Bad Education, Jeremy Irons for Watchmen, and Jeremy Pope for Hollywood. Ben, you have Paul Mescal, first nomination, the surprise breakout of Normal People. Libby, you have Mark Ruffalo on Gold Derby. All right.
I do.
Convince me.
I don't know how I feel about that anymore. No, I just like, as much as in other categories they want to showcase other things, like I see the argument for Mescal. I just I don't know. I don't know if the heat's there. I don't think enough people have seen it. Ben, state your case.
So my case for Mescal is twofold. One, I think there's just enough people who've seen it because it also earned writing and directing nominations, which are very, very hard to come by in the limited series category. But more than that, what's been trending in this category of late are the kind of breakout actors. Like are the people who kind of come out of nowhere, and it's not necessarily we've been talking about these guys forever, they're famous movie stars, they're big names that you know, and now they're competing at TV, so let's honor them. The trend has been we're going to look past Robert De Niro, we're going to give it to Riz Ahmed, we're going to give it to Darren Criss, even for Gianni Versace, and last year we're going to give it to
Jharrel Jerome.
When they see us, Jharrel Jerome, yeah.
That's a great argument.
That's my very, like, thin
I think that makes total sense
for this. I think it makes enough sense, but I still don't feel like... I feel like the presumptive favorite needs to be Mark Ruffalo. I feel like Hugh Jackman is kind of a big threat because he's just so freaking likable, and he's in a really great movie that, again, if enough people watched it and really responded to it, they'll give it to him. But at this moment, for me, I'm leaning Mescal because of the trend of where things have been, and because Normal People did just well enough in other categories for me to think, well, I think it has an edge over Bad Education, and it might have an edge over I Know This Much Is True, because the ratings for that were rough, and literally only getting one nomination for Ruffalo is the bare minimum it could have done at the Emmys, so it does not seem like people really love that show.
Moving on to what God I hope is the most slam dunk of all of these picks. Best Actress in a Limited Series or TV Movie. We have Regina King from Watchmen, Cate Blanchett from Mrs. America, Shira Haas from Unorthodox, Kerry Washington from Little Fires Everywhere, and Octavia Spencer for Self-Made. And I'll say it right now, my pick would be locked at Regina King, and I wouldn't change that for any of your arguments. But try.
I don't want to try. I agree with you for the most part. I think the phrasing "most slam dunk" might be appropriate.
I would say the next category is that, but
yeah, that's true. That's actually correct.
I guess I meant of the acting categories.
Of the acting, I'd say this is the most slam dunk without any of them still being a slam dunk. I can't say that this is a guarantee given she's up against Cate Blanchett, who was just immaculate in Mrs. America.
Fucking powerhouse.
I still contend that Shira Haas could steal this thing. I think it's Regina King's year. I think Watchmen is like she's the face of Watchmen, and
every year is Regina King's year.
And that's exactly it. Every year is Regina King's year. The only way that Shira Haas would take it is, in my mind, that same rationale, that people are kind of now aware of how often they've awarded Regina King. So then they're like, let's move on. Like, we know she's great. We know the show is great. We're honoring it in so many other ways. But Unorthodox was something we really loved. This is a breakout person we want to see get roles. We're going to give it to her this year. I think that's a bit of a long shot argument, but it's still like an open window to me where I could see it happening in some timeline. So,
well, you're a catastrophist, and I respect that. I would say they're going to be fine awarding Regina King because, I mean, it's Regina King, but also it seems pretty clear that Sister Night is going to be the Regina King role for maybe the rest of time. And it would be a shame not to recognize that. That said, Cate Blanchett is, I think Ben used the right word, just immaculate in Mrs. America. I don't know. That's a very difficult character to embody and kind of bring insight to. But I think it has to be Regina because Watchmen isn't Watchmen without Regina. And I totally hear your argument on Shira Haas, but I don't think you give 26 nominations to a series built around one woman and then not award that woman. So I think it has to be Regina.
Well, speaking of Watchmen, I sort of have these
we
grouped
always
together.
Do.
We have limited series, and then I included here writing directing for a limited series. You both have This Extraordinary Being right now as your pick for both writing and directing. Writing, which would of course be Damon Lindelof and Cord Jefferson. Directing, which would be Stephen Williams. I have spent countless hours with this episode of television. Please go listen to Deep Dive on the Filmmaker Toolkit podcast
it's
stream,
amazing.
Where we go all into this episode. I mean, I the fact that I love this episode and have listened to every person on the craft, like below the line, above the line, talk about it and still love it as much as I do is proof that it is a genius piece of television and deserves to be awarded.
I don't know how you vote against it. Like, I love the first episode of Watchmen, but what they did on This Extraordinary Being was just really special. I think it's just one of those really special episodes of television. It's like when you sat down and you saw The Suitcase for the first time and you were like, oh, okay, this is the pinnacle of television. Like, I will take this feeling with me as I move forward. This is why I watch television. That's the feeling I got from This Extraordinary Being. And I have to believe, because of its popularity with nominations, that the TV Academy agrees. So, Ben?
No, I don't disagree. I think that I think that Watchmen in all three of these categories is as close as you can get to a lock going into the night, and it's saying something considering, again, like just how great the rest of the nominees are. I'd say that, considering the very upfront, directorial challenges that just, you can see playing out in front of you, that This Extraordinary Being would be more of a lock on the director's side for Stephen Williams than it would on the writer's side, except it's still the only episode of Watchmen nominated on the writer's side. It's got both Damon and Cord on, as the episode writers. You typically want to honor the showrunner when you're going to give away an award like that, when you're going to give out the writing award. And, I think that it's kind of hard for me to believe that shows like Mrs. America and Unorthodox aren't really gonna walk away with a writing trophy this year, because they're so beautifully crafted from that specific side, and yet I can't really imagine this going anywhere else. So I think Watchmen will do very well come Emmy night, and those three plus Regina will be kind of the crowning awards to end it all, to wrap it all up.